Yeah, boy. It's Ray Dalio, billionaire investor Ray Dalio is worried about something worse than a recession. Full interview. Man, I love Ray Dalio. I can't remember. My dad sent me a video from Ray Dalio in I think 2014, and it was just talking about like economic cycles. And then he came out with a book. I want to say I read it in like 2016, maybe 2017, 2018. It was somewhere around there. And he came, and then I just started getting obsessed with like researching him and stuff like that. And his view on risk and diversifying risk helped me out a lot. When it just comes to like portfolio management and all that jazz. So I'm curious to see what he has to say. You know, like from my opinion, before we get into anything he's about to say, when it comes from a macro perspective, you're always going to be cautious of risk and you're always preparing for the worst case scenario. Regardless if it happens or not, regardless if you position your portfolio that way or not. But I do agree that things can get really bad. Like the amount of leverage and debt that is like globally is ridiculous. There's been so much speculation, so much misuse of leverage. And then also you have all these geopolitical things going on, like with the Trump tariffs and all that stuff. And regardless of the Trump tariffs, you have so much going on in the Middle East with Israel and Hamas. You have stuff going on between Russia and Ukraine. Right now you have a lot going on with China, US. It's a lot of geopolitical things that are going on in the world today. And I really want to watch this video. For one, I want to learn and see his perspective, but then also I'm curious, in the future, let's say 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, are the concerns that we have today still valid? And have any of these major players made a strategic move that is going to potentially jeopardize, like for one, free trade? Or I won't even say, I guess you can kind of somewhat call it free trade with the tariffs. I know some like educated people are going to be like, oh, this guy's a fucking retard. Because I know I'm not supposed to say that word, but it's in my vocabulary. So it is what it is. And so, but people are going to be like, oh, he doesn't know the difference between free trade and tariffs or whatever. But I mean, I'm a trader. I'm not like an economist or anything like that. Even though I look at like what economists say and like all that jazz. I mean, I'm not like some super intelligent macroeconomic expert where I can predict the trajectory of where interest rates are going to be 2 meetings from now. You know what I mean? I'm not like, I look at the data, I trade somewhat based off the data, and I look at charts. So, but I am curious to see what Ray Dalio has to say. So let's get into it.
Welcome back. And joining me now is Ray Dalio, the founder of the world's largest hedge fund, Bridgewater Associates. He is also the author of the new book, How Countries Go Broke. It's out in June. Mr. Dalio, welcome to Meet the Press.
Thank you. Good to be here. Just call me Ray.
Okay. Well, Ray, I'll take you up on that. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your perspective. As I just said, you did found the world's largest hedge fund. You have been in.
I think something also like interesting to talk about with Ray Dalio is like when he was 24, he was broke. I mean, like it's crazy how he completely changed the trajectory of his life from 34 to where he's at today. I think he's like in his somewhere in his 60s or 70s. And I mean, like now he has the biggest hedge fund in the world. And I mean, he's pretty much like really big into bonds. I know that for sure. But I know he still takes like, you know, like I won't even say speculative plays, but I know he does a lot of diversification in different markets using a macro framework. So anyways, I just thought it was cool to talk about that real quick before we get into this interview.
This field for more than 50 years. It's worth pointing out to our viewers, I think it's important to note you consider yourself to be apolitical, and you say that the tariff problem is a symptom of a much greater problem. What do you mean by that?
There's a financial problem. There's an imbalance problem. There are basically 5 big forces through history that drive everything. First, there's the money, credit, debt economic cycle in which there's a building up of debt in a cyclical way that becomes too large, and we're going to have problems. We're going to have a government debt problem. Maybe we can get into this. The second big force through time is the internal conflict force. The left and the right, differences in wealth and values causing a conflict that we're seeing it changing our political order. So the first is changing our monetary order. The second is changing our political order internally. And then the third is the great world order, how countries deal with each other. When there's a rising power, challenging an existing power. And now we are going from multilateralism, which is largely an American world order type of thing, to a unilateral world order in which there's great conflict. And the other two factors all through history have been acts of nature, droughts, floods, and pandemics. And number four is technology changing. And how they are coming together are the main forces behind this. For example, there can't be imbalances anymore in that environment.
Do you think that President Trump's tariffs are exacerbating what you are describing, this complicated mix of challenges that the world is facing?
I think it's just a function of how well they're handled. You know, it's a reality that it's a desire to bring in tax revenue from that. It's a reality that we would like to build manufacturing and jobs here. This is a reality. That's how that's done.
I kind of want to stop right there for a quick second. I do agree. It's like this tariff thing. You have people who are super for it and people who are super against it. And it's such a massive, like, huge gray area, in my opinion, because of the fact that both sides have like valid points that they're making. After this video, I also kind of want to look at the comments to see what they have to say. But I just think that I haven't really decided if I'm super for these tariffs or not, because of the fact that I understand like Trump's, or like even it was a video I saw where Nancy Pelosi in the 90s was talking about the trade deficits. And it's crazy because everybody's making it seem like it's like, since Trump is doing it, it's a super bad thing. But politicians from both parties have talked about it being an issue for a long time. And somebody in the comments made a valid point. Like, you know, when you're the world's reserve currency, which is the US, the USD, the US dollar, there's such a huge responsibility that comes with being the world's safe haven currency or reserve currency, because of the fact that when all commodities are traded from country to country, it's priced in US dollar. So when a Federal Reserve will rise or raise or lower rates, it does cause issue or causes businesses in other countries to have to adjust because of the fact that they have to buy commodities in USD and pay for things in the US dollar. So that person made a valid point. And I just want to say that, like, from my opinion, I can't tell you that this is great or not. You know, I'm not that intelligent to be able to make a forecast and tell you that everything is going to be rosy, regardless if we continue with the tariffs or whoever the next president decides to do something completely different with tariffs. But, you know, as a trader or an investor, you know, all I can say is that we have to adjust to whatever the market is giving us and just roll with the punches. I mean, of course you want, you know, to have a Goldilocks market regime where everything's perfect and I can just go like borrow money from every bank possible and just invest it, and you know, you get the GameStop things, you get all these short squeezes and gamma, all that. I mean, like, you get all the perfect things happening in the Goldilocks market regime. But that's not what we have right now. You know, and we can't just say, oh, I hope that things get better just so my portfolio can be better. I mean, the thing is, it's like, if you're a trader right now, the market volatility is good, but I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, trading these markets is stressful. So, anyways, I can't tell you that this is good or bad because both sides have valid points.
Whether that's done in a practical way, whether that's done in a stable way, whether that's done with quality negotiations in which that's a mutual problem, or whether that's done in a chaotic and disruptive way that produces great conflict makes all the difference in the world.
Based on what you're seeing right now, do you think that these tariffs are being carried out in a practical way or a chaotic way?
I think we'll see. So far, very disruptive. So far, very disruptive, right?
Okay, see, this is another reason why, because it's like, I like Ray Dalio's point on this, because usually when somebody asks us a question like that, they want a yes or no answer. But it's so hard to tell. Now, I do agree that it has been very destructive, because you can see in the markets right now, there's so much volatility. Markets have tanked. Everybody's talking about a crash. And so it's definitely disruptive and causing volatility. But it's like, it's hard to say that if it's the right move or the wrong move. It's really hard to say, because, like I said, both sides have valid viewpoints and arguments to the use of using tariffs as like a ploy to kind of get what you want. Now you might say, oh, he used the word ploy wrong, but I don't know. Like I said, this is, like, you know, limited vocabulary, limited lexicon, if you will. But I definitely think that it's so hard to say that this is super right or super wrong. And it's like a lot of people are so to the extreme now in my time, or this present timeline that we're in, to where it's just that, like, if you have a different viewpoint, you're like instantly viewed as an idiot. And I think as investors or traders, we kind of have to come with some form of humility to say that we don't know. You know, that's perfectly fine to say I don't know, but I have to be willing to adjust to what the market is giving and the information that's provided. So I really like that point that Ray Dalio made. Like, you know, it's tough to say what's going on. Or, well, not to say what's going on, but it's definitely tough to say if what's going on is right or wrong, and what's going to be the outcome in the future.
Right? And so we don't know what the numbers are. But that could be part of a process, right? It depends where we are at the end of the 90 days. Because what was put there is like throwing rocks into the production system. And those impacts would be enormous in terms of the efficiency of the whole world. Great cost.
I want to ask you about something that's on a lot of people's minds, your predictions for the future. And I want to start with the R word. I know you think this is just a piece of it. Of course, I'm talking about a recession.
Oh, you already heard. I was going to say a retard. But no, I don't know what's such a huge, like, I don't know why people are so upset with the R word, which is retard. Now, I do, like, okay, this is finance, so they're going to say recession, but yeah, I don't know. I felt like somebody was behind me, but yeah, I mean, anyways, recession.
Do you think it is likely that the United States will dip into a recession because of President Trump's tariffs?
Before he answers this, I've been thinking for like the last year and a half that we've already been in a recession.
I think.
Oops, sorry, didn't mean to press the button. But when you look at GDP and inflation, like inflation has been creeping up like slowly. It's still down overall, but it's just like it's a lot stickier. But then when you look at like true-flation, their numbers are beautiful. Like the numbers they have are completely beautiful. But when you look at the number that the Fed is going off, it just seems like it's still like creeping back up. So I think that we've been in a recession. I think that it's not as bad, but I think it could get really bad depending on what happens, you know. But you know, we'll see. We'll see.
I think that right now we are at a decision-making point and very close to a recession. And I'm worried about something.
Oh, and I'll say this, the reason why we're technically not in a recession is because the Fed decided to change the viewpoints on what is the definition of a recession, like a year and a half ago or something like that. So technically we're not in a recession, but we're kind of leading into one. And that's why I think in another video I said, I feel like this year is going to be bullish because we still technically have like 2 rate cuts predicted for this year. But this tariff thing has caused a lot of volatility, and then I think that's one of the reasons why we haven't really seen risk on asset prices have a significant boost. Like we would, like I feel like if we didn't have this whole tariff issue, markets would still be at all-time highs, or maybe it retraced a little bit, but I feel like we would have made new highs again. But this tariff thing has really caused a lot of disruption in the market, And I think, like he said, we're kind of at like a standpoint or like a crossroad to where it's like, what is going to be the outcome? Like a lot of these countries decided to, they agreed to like the 10% tariff or something like that. I think China was the only one, who, I'm kind of talking all over the place, but let's see what Ray Dalio has to say. Or as he said, we could call him Ray. So we'll call him Ray, Mr. Ray, or Ray.
Worse than a recession if this isn't handled well. A recession is 2 negative quarters of GDP, and whether it goes slightly there, we always have those things. We have something that's much more profound. We have a breaking down of the monetary order. We are going to change the monetary order because we cannot spend the amounts of money, so we have that problem. And when we talk about the dollar and we talk about tariffs, we have that. We are having profound changes in our domestic order, how ruling is existing, and we're having profound changes in the world order. Such times are very much like the 1930s. I've studied history, and this repeats over and over again. So if you take tariffs, if you take debt, if you take the rising power challenging the existing power, if you take those factors and look at the factors, those changes in the orders, the systems, are very, very disruptive. How that's handled could produce something that is much worse than a recession, or it could be handled well. Let's take the debt situation.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, very quickly, because I want to be very specific about what you mean. You're saying worse than recession. You're saying this is reminiscent of the 1930s. We should tell our viewers you correctly predicted the 2008 financial crisis. What is your prediction for?
Man, if he's talking about, I didn't know he was talking about it being worse than the depression. I won't say that's crazy, but that's like that. I mean, like, if that were to happen, that's crazy. Like that, that would be bad. That would be bad, really bad.
Where the country is headed right now.
Right now, we're at a juncture. Let's take the budget. If the budget deficit can be reduced to 3% of GDP, it will be about 7% if things are not changed. If it could be reduced to about 3% of GDP, and these trade deficits and so on are managed in the right way, this could all be managed very well. I believe that members of Congress should take the pledge, what I call the 3% pledge, that in one way or another, that they will get that budget deficit down to that number. If they don't, we're going to have a supply-demand problem for debt at the same time as we have these other problems.
Yeah, see, I was talking to my dad the other day. I didn't know that apparently, like, we have to pay, the government has to pay off these bonds or whatever, this interest or whatever. And he was telling me about, Trump is trying to do something with, I know this is going to sound so stupid because I'm just trying to recall the conversation, but, Trump is trying to lower markets with this tariff talks to help, potentially get Powell to lower interest rates, so that the debt payment that the obligation for the U.S. government to pay off this debt could be lower. I had no idea about that, and that kind of just goes to show you that, like, when it comes to geopolitics, I'm very new. Like, I'm so even with global macro, I'm still super new. Like, I've been into it for a few years now, but I'm still super new. There's still so much I don't even know. And I like to talk about it. I like to look at it and learn from, like, these conversations with, like, hedge fund guys that talk about macro. But I'm really curious to see how this is all going to play out. And me making this video right now is kind of just me talking, like, what are my thoughts during this, like, kind of crossroads event? Because I know, like, 10, 20 years from now, if I ever watch this video again and just take the time to say, hey, like, let's see what old Eon had to say, it would be interesting to see, like, my viewpoints, where I was right, where I was wrong, where I'm like a freaking idiot. And I'm like, dude, you didn't have any clue at all what you were talking about. I still think about stuff from, like, when I was in 6th grade and I said something stupid. So anyways, yeah, let's see what what they have to say for the rest of the interview.
And the results of that will be worse than a normal recession.
So, and just to follow up on that point, worse than a recession, you're talking about the 1930s. What specifically are you warning of? Are you saying that it could be as bad as a depression? What's your biggest fear?
The value of money. What is a storehold of wealth? That is a...
Every single time that I've seen Ray Dalio have an interview with people, it's so interesting how they try and corner him into this, like, give me a definite answer for the question that I'm asking you and make it as simple as possible. And then he'll give you like a detailed reason on his view. And like I said, with macro, it's like you can have a strong viewpoint. And then I think if you read his book, I can't remember which book. I know it was the first one. You'll see that like he has really strong conviction on some things, but then some things, which is one of the reasons why I like him, is he's like, it could kind of go either way. And I think that kind of goes back to the reason, like, what made him broke when he was in his early 30s was he had such strong conviction on something, and he didn't look at the other potential outcomes that could happen. But I think every single interview I've watched with him, the interviewers have always, not to say anything bad about the lady, because she's just doing her job. I'm pretty sure that they had questions that they gave to her to ask, but I don't know. I just think that it's a little weird that they do it like that.
Bond. In other words, one man's debt is a storehold of wealth. That the value of money. What is a storehold of wealth? That is a bond. In other words, one man's debt is another man's assets, bond holders. And so we're going to be in a situation where if that storehold of wealth is in jeopardy because there's too much supply and demand and so on, and we have a monetary inflation, we will have great disruptions. And that could be like the breakdown of the monetary system in 71. It could be like 2008. It's going to be very severe. I think it could be more severe than those if these other matters simultaneously occur. Imagine if we have a downturn politically and an international conflict.
What's worst case scenario that you're warning of? To be very specific, to put it into terms people can
very
understand.
specific, the value of money, internal conflict, that is not the normal democracy as we know it, and international conflict in a way that is highly disruptive to the world economy and could even be a military.
Okay, so this is pretty much what I was saying earlier. It's like he's giving you specifics on what he's saying and what he views as potential risk. But it's like she wants him to say that we're going into a Great Depression. I mean, like, that's the weirdest thing when I've seen people interview him. It's like every single interview, I won't say every single interview, but at least the interviews that I've seen, it's like they ask him these questions and they want him to give them the answer that they're looking for without hearing what he's actually saying. And I just don't get why they do that.
Conflict, just as these breakdowns have occurred before. You know, we have a new order that began in 1945, a new monetary order and a new geopolitical order. And these go in cycles that can be measured. And I worry about the breakdown of that kind of an order, particularly since it doesn't need to happen, because there are certain things that could be done in which this is better, a better restructuring of these debts and actions taken.
So that takes me to my next question. You have this book, How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle. What is the solution here?
Well, there are a series of solutions, but let's take the most important.
And we have 1 minute.
1 minute. Okay. 3% of GDP, bring that deficit down. It can be done in a bipartisan way, the way it was done between 1991 and 98. I explained how that could be done, doing things together for the greater good. And then internationally on all of these issues, to use American strength, but to negotiate well, to lay out ways in which bad conflict and inefficient policies don't create great disruptions, but get us through this in an orderly way.
All right, Ray Dalio, thank you so.
All right, cool video. There's a comment that I wanted to look at as well. Yeah, so Americans, I hate when people just say Americans don't understand. It's like, shut the fuck up. It's like, how are you gonna say Americans don't understand? I mean, anyways, you know, triggered. Americans don't understand what it means for the dollar to be the world currency because they've never been on the other end. Let's say a barrel of oil is $100. Japan, for example, would pay 14,000 yen for the same barrel, since $1 is 140 yen. I'm sorry, I was looking at something else. But if our Fed increases interest rates, yeah, see, they're even American. So it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Anyways, but if the Fed increases interest rates to fight inflation or whatever, Japan would all of a sudden pay 15,000 yen for the same barrel, even though they didn't do anything. Other countries' policy affecting their own economy. This is what every other country in the world has been dealing with for decades, and Americans are oblivious because they never experienced it. We didn't police the world. We protected the dollar. The world didn't take advantage of us. We gave concession to letting the dollar be the reserve currency. Now that is at risk. You will soon experience what it feels like to be on the other side. It's like, shut the fuck up. I'm just saying that, like, I know that's kind of like rude or whatever, but it's like, if you're American, and maybe they're not American, who knows? But it's just like, why are you even saying Americans don't understand? I mean, anybody who understands, like, I guess global finance or just like international trade and just like the basic stuff would know that. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it's not. I don't even think that the U.S. dollar is at risk. I mean, when you look at how long it took for the British pound to no longer be the world safe haven currency, and it led to the U.S. This shit took like 30, 40 years. And then maybe it takes 10 to 20 years now. But I mean, that's going to be a whole process. I don't think that this is, I think this is stupid. But I do think that they're right. I mean, at least when it comes to like the transaction and the reason why, like, you know, tariffs and all that stuff makes sense. But I mean, I didn't like that one. Let's see. He's talking about dumping U.S. treasuries. But anyways, you know, we're gonna call the video there because he's not talking about depression. He's talking about the collapse of the U.S. dollar and depletion. He's not talking about. He's saying depression without saying depression. Rich people never talk about taxes at that bluff. Man, see, I don't know. Like, it's like people make all these comments and just like have their. I mean, and like I'm making this video, giving my opinion as well. But it's just like, I don't know. Oh, and he's talking about 33-degree Mason. What the fuck? It's no coincidence that he's had a former 33-degree Mason. Man, I don't know, man. Like, I just look at these comments. I'm just like, man, people just need to like just say that they don't know. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, that's the video. Oh, well, you guys kind of saw OBS. But anyways, that's the video. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Man, even Jesus had a shooter. And God be having unbelievers that didn't mess up their demeanor. And yes, they know it's hard. They know, cause when they be up in those trenches, man, they show